Let's now review script loops. You'll be encountering this type of script structure in all kinds of different scripts. Loops allow you to execute a specific block of code repeatedly using a series of values or variables. These structures save time, space, and also make your code a lot easier to troubleshoot and debug. Here's a script, and we're tracing out 360 separate ovals. Each one is rotated 1 degree from the last to create this very interesting looking shape, which I suppose you could refer to it as a toroid. Notice that each of those ovals is created as I run through this script here. First, we're creating a variable, my toroid, creating a new shape with that variable. Then we're making a graphics shape, line style 1. Then we're going ahead and drawing the ellipse with these properties right here. It's interesting to go ahead and change some of these properties. Let's change the 150 there to 100. Do a control test movie, and gives us a smaller toroid there. Also, the line style is kind of interesting. Line style 3 will give us a thicker line. Line style 0.5 will give us a much thinner line. Like so. Now, ActionScript actually has a collection of different loop types, including for loops, for in loops, for each in loops, while loops, and do while loops. So let's look at some simple examples from several of these loop types. Let's start with this example, the for loop. These types of looping structures allow you to iterate through a variable for a specific range of values. In this case, I'm iterating through values less than 361, 10 numbers at a time. So what I'm actually going to be doing is running through this 36 times from 1 to 360, creating a set of ovals defined by these properties here, placed at this location, x and y 200. There's the key line there. Rotation equals I. So I'm rotating this 10 degrees each time. So here are my 36 ovals, each rotated to create a 360-degree shape. If I change this from 361 just to 1, in other words, iterate just one time, you'll see a single oval there. Also, set this to 300, so we'll set up 30 rotations here, creating 300 degrees of that toroid. Now you must supply 3 expressions in a for statement, a variable that is set with an initial value. In this case, the variable equals I. It's going to be an integer starting at 0. A conditional statement is needed that determines when the looping ends. In other words, run this from I equals 1 to less than 300. Let's set this back to the original value. 361 means that it will stop at 360. And then lastly, you need an expression that changes the value of the variable with each iteration through the loop, or each time through the loop. In this case, it's this plus 10. So add 10 each time I loop through. Next, there's the for in loop. These loops iterate through the properties of an object or the element of an array. For example, you can use the for in loop structure to iterate through the properties of a generic object. Object properties, by the way, are not kept in any particular order. So the properties that you see in the output may appear in a seemingly random order. Here's a script. Sets up a my object with a set of parameters here, u, x, y, and z. We're setting up a variable I equals a string in my object. Then we're tracing out as we iterate through each of these 4 objects. So the output I've placed right down here you should get is x colon 290, y 300, z 301, u 289. Let's go ahead and test the movie. And there is my output. Again, notice the order changes from that placed here. In other words, it doesn't go in that order. My z value is first, and then my u, and then my x, and then my y here in the output. Let's take another look at the script itself. Compare that to the for loop. The limit of your looping, in this case, is set up by your object right there. If I were to add another object here, let's go ahead and type A colon 267. Do a control test movie. And notice that the A object gets added to my output. So I'm iterating through the items in the object, and that dictates the range of the looping. Next is the for each in loop. These types of loops iterate through the items of a collection. These can be tags in an XML or XML list object, the values held by the object properties, or the elements of an array. For example, here in this script, you can use a for each in loop to iterate through the properties of a generic object. But unlike the for in loop, the iterator variable in a for each in loop contains the value held by the property instead of the name of the property. So notice that in this case, the value is 20 and 30 of my objects. So the output will be 20 and 30. Let's now move on to the next movie and review some other types of looping structures, including the while and the do while loop structures.